Okay, Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Dear students, today we are going to discuss um, about Russian defense strategy. As we all know that Russia is very dominant power. It had been a dominant power once during the Cold War period. It was the second country which acquired nuclear weapons and brought a kind of strategic stability at global level. So that was the time when Russia, because it was a Soviet empire and they were a huge landmass. With that landmass, they had huge abundant resources. They had a huge military force of about 2 million people, and they were dominating the world politics. And they challenged the U.S. hegemony and the NATO hegemony throughout in the Cold War era till 1991, till the breakup of the Soviet Union because of the global mismanagement, the economic mismanagement, and their overwhelming spending on military modernization. So before we move forward, let's understand Russia. The Russians today, they are dominating the world power. They are the veto power. Politically, they are dominating the world. They are one of the veto power. They are challenging the U.S. policies, U.S. foreign and defense policies in every region of the world, whether it is Iraq, whether it is Syria, whether it is Iran, Libya, or any other part. Even in Afghanistan, the Russians are dominating, and they are challenging the U.S. hegemony in these areas. It was Russia that vetoed the U.S. Aggressive approach against the Syrian government, Bashar al-Assad, and without Russia, Syrian government could not prevail. So that was the support of Russia, that kicked out ISIS and Free Syrian Army from Syria and consolidated the position of Bashar al-Assad. And of course, the NATO and the Saudi influence was deterred by the Russian involvement in Syria and elsewhere. If we analyze the situation in Afghanistan right now, the Russians are again dominating and asserting their political hegemony. Russia, it was one of the country because there were, in my opinion, there were four countries who created problems for the Russians and for the Americans in Afghanistan. One, it was Pakistan. Number two, it was Iran. Third, it was China. And fourth, it was Russia. All these countries, one way or the other, they created serious challenges for the U.S. in Afghanistan, and ultimately, United States of America had to leave, and now they are dominating the regional politics of Central Asia and Afghanistan, and because of the Russian involvement. So that's how Russia is politically connected in the world, and strategically they are very strong country. They are in close alliance with the Chinese. It is not a binding alliance like NATO, but it is you can say for their interest they come together and they support each other in the international political arena. Apart from this, Russia is also a nuclear weapon state, as we have already discussed, and they are the leading nuclear weapon state in the world with all sorts of weapons and equipment, long-range bombers, nuclear submarines. If the Russians, Americans possess 71 nuclear submarines, the Russians possess 72 nuclear submarines. So that is the balance which is there. The Russians are also coming up with all sorts of military capabilities, whether it is air defense. We have already discussed about S-400, S-500, and the counter of the US air defense like THAAD, Patriot, and Aegis system. The Russians have developed certain missile capabilities which are really dangerous. Which are really lethal, and these capabilities have the ability to penetrate any American air defense system. So as a whole, Russia is one of the dominating power in the world, politically, economically, and strategically, very significant power. Economically, Russia is also dominating the world politics because of their oil and gas resources. They possess huge hydrocarbon resources, especially gas, oil, and the major recipient are the European Union. And because of this particular dependence, the European Union cannot ever challenge the Russians, whether it was the Ukrainian fiasco or the Russian involvement in Crimea. They could not, come up with any concrete or any credible sanctions against the Russians. Why? Because they buy $100 billion of gas from the Russians. So that is the backbone of the European Union. It is in the, you can say, the neck of the European Union is in the hands of the Russians. Why? Because they possess huge resources, and in future, this dependence is going to increase because, according to different estimates, by 2030, the European Union's dependence on foreign imported oil would be 94%, which is too huge. It is too big. So we need to understand that the Russians are politically, economically, and strategically a very dominant power in the world and dominating the world politics. So that is also one of the example of the Russian exports to the EU, and most of the gas and other things go to EU, and they earn a lot of money from that particular gas, oil and gas. Russia is also a huge, you can say, oil and gas resource, and their oil and gas supplies goes to most of the European countries, and the dependence of the European Union is would remain on Russia for coming many years. These are some of the supply lines which transport the oil and gas from Russia to the European countries, and which shows that the how the Europeans are dependent on this. As you can see in these particular pipeline, the South Stream pipeline route options, which goes along Russia, Bulgaria, Serbia, Hungary, Slovakia, I think. Then you have got Italy, Austria, and the pipeline, other branches to Croatia and Serbia. So basically, in a nutshell, the Russians are dominating the oil and gas supplies to these countries. So most of the gas supplies goes to these states with their number, as they are mentioned in this particular slide. So most of the countries, they import most of their oil and gas need from the Russians. 30% of the EU's gas comes from Russia. So the major recipient of gas from Russia are Germany, France, Italy, and many other countries of the European Union, which shows that the European Union's dependence is huge on Russian oil and gas. So why I'm giving you this particular backgrounder, because when we discuss their defense policy, you would understand that how Russia is using their economic muscle, economic power, and their dependence on Russia in Russian own interest. For example, recently the Russians, when they captured Crimea, the European Union could come up with no concrete, you can say, economic sanctions or military sanctions or military options. Why? Because there are many reasons. The first, the Russians are economic might, oil and gas, Eurasia is in their control. And आपने पढ़ा भी होगा वो हार्फोर्ड मैकेंडर की theory थी ना. He who controls Eurasia controls the destinies of the world. So the Russians are right now in dominating the Eurasian, areas. Apart from the, these options, the Russians are dominating the global politics. Also, the military might of Russia is, it's too big, and they are present face to face with the Americans and the NATO in many areas, in many areas of the world. If we look at the future of Russian planning and Russian military modernization, you would be amazed to know that the Russians are coming up with extremely highly sophisticated technologies, which are not only going to create serious challenges for the US hegemony, but also they are going to be they are going to have the dominating effect on the world politics. And now let's quickly look at the Putin's military objectives by 2020. They are aiming for modern land and sea-based intercontinental ballistic missiles, 400 plus. They are aiming for these things, keeping in mind the American air defense capabilities like Aegis, Patriot, and THAAD. And apart from that, they are also coming up with 8 long-range strategic missile submarines, which are going to have the capability to carry out operations deep into into oceans and seas. They are aiming for 20 multi-purpose submarines also. These submarines would be for reconnaissance and surveillance purposes also, and some of them would be for fighting purposes. The Russians are also expanding their their warship industry, and they are aiming for 50 naval warships, surface warships, in which include the frigates, corvettes, anti-submarine warfare warships, and these capabilities are needed because the Russians are creating asserting themselves in the Mediterranean Sea. They are asserting themselves in the Black Sea and the other areas. So they need strong maritime force, because the Americans are also looking toward the Asia Pacific region. So in order to balance the American focus on the Asia Pacific, the Russians are also coming up with modern technologies. They are looking for 100 military spacecraft also, and they are looking for 600 airplanes, including 5th generation aircraft. Now, right now, the Russians possess, as 4th generation aircraft, Su-30 and Su-35. Now, these aircraft are also quite good, but keeping in mind the American acquisition of modern weapon and equipment, if you remember in the first lecture, we discussed all these things, that what type of capabilities the Americans are, getting. So the Russians are now trying to balance them, and they are also coming up with 600 such capabilities, and these are going to have a dominating effect in the world politics. They are also looking for 1,000 helicopters, multi-purpose helicopters. Some of them would be gunships, some of them would be anti-submarine warfare in the maritime domain, and some of them would be for the support of the land forces or the air force. The Russians are also going to develop around C-400 anti-aircraft missile system. This is same kind of S-400 type of thing which is there, and they're also looking for S-500 in future. They are looking for 38 anti-aircraft missile systems, and they are also looking for many other capabilities like modern tanks, 2,000 artillery, and cannons, 17,000 military vehicles. So in a nutshell, as a whole, with these capabilities, Russia is trying to reassert themselves, and they are trying to come up with they are reviving the legacy of the previous legacy of the Soviet Union. The lessons which they have learned from the past was not to focus overwhelmingly on the defense and just ignore the economy. Now they are focusing on economy, as well as they are focusing on the military technologies, on the nuclear deterrence also, just to maintain their credible deterrence against the American or their other adversaries in the world, like the European Union. So if we analyze the global insecurity for the Russian leaders' vision that the international scene, international system is dangerous and volatile, chaotic, and marked by stiff competition for resources. And this is their official position. This is I believe this is quite right. The Chinese are asserting themselves, the Indians are asserting themselves, the Americans and the European Union are trying to get more and more resources from other countries, like the attack on the Iraq, Libya, and many other countries around the globe, was for just to control the resources of the world. So the Russians believe that they, keeping in mind this international system, we have to develop certain capabilities to cope up with traditional threats to their security and non-traditional threat like terrorism, like global warming, like others, extremism and radicalization. So all these challenges are there, and the Russian believe that in order to cope up with these challenges, Russia have to improve its overall capabilities. The Russian threat perception is, of course, towards America, definitely. The American military modernization, the American, acquisition of modern weapon and equipment, their defense allocations, their involvement in Asia Pacific region, that creates serious challenges for the Russians. The Russians believe that according to the 2016 Levada opinion polls, 65% of the people surveyed believed that other countries represent a military threat to Russia. 65% of the people, and the threat which they face from other countries include extra regional powers like the US. They are the only country from where the Russians face threat. And then you have got some regional powers also, like the European powers, who are also close to the Russian borderland land area. Russian face, nuclear and conventional threat also from these countries. Although these countries may not carry out any strike in recent times, because the Russians also possess, huge capabilities. But at the same time, you cannot ignore these threats, and you just always maintain focus and try to improve and develop certain capabilities just to maintain your own defense as much as you can. Let's quickly look at the Russian military doctrine, what it says about, and what are its main features. The Russians believe that the military security of the Russian Federation from external and internal military threats. So external threats, as I told you before, it comes from the NATO, and the internal threats, it comes from the radicalization and terrorism and extremism, especially in the Dagestan area, in the Chechnya, from Afghanistan, drug trade. So these are some of the challenges, and the ISIS emergence, especially from Middle East, and from Middle East to Afghanistan, and Afghanistan to then Russia. So they also their military's their military's doctrine is designed to counter these two threats, external and internal. Unresolved are many regional conflicts, like the one in Crimea. You had issues with Ukraine. You had also issues with Georgia in the past, and small scale other issues also are there in the regional context, like especially the ISIS emergence in Afghanistan. That is also one of the major challenge for them, and they are trying to cope with that. Secondly, the instability in Afghanistan is also posing a serious threat from the Russians. So Russians want stability in Afghanistan. So Afghanistan could be a stable state, and why? Because the Afghan, drug trade every year kills about 30,000 Russians. So 30,000 Russians die because of the Afghan drug trade, according to different estimates. So Russians are seriously looking into it, and they want to dominate the Afghan politics also, because they don't want America to remain there in this region. So that is also one of the aspects. The main external military dangers, as I told you before, it comes from the NATO, and giving its global, you can say, ingress in many countries. They try to topple certain regimes which have got close ties with the Russians, like the Syrian regime had a close affiliation with the Russian. Libyan regime was also one of that. Iran is also very close, in strategic partnership with the Iranian. They buy Iranian, you can say the Iranians buy Russian weapon and equipment. Syrians also buy the Russian weapon and equipment. So Iran and Syria, they are friends of Russia. And at the same time, the Americans and in NATO, they try to, carry out serious challenges for Syrians and the Iranians, and create problems for these states, undermine their economy, undermine their political, structure overall, and just to make them weak, so they cannot play any considerable role in the global politics or the regional politics. So that is the main external threat. If we look at the NATO presence in this region, in European, in Eastern Europe and others, so you'll get to understand that they are present in many areas, and collectively they have got huge military force and capabilities, and especially those countries who don't have nuclear weapons. The Americans have deployed their nuclear weapons in these states. So as we have already discussed in the previous lectures, like the tactical nuclear weapons wala jo lecture tha, usme we have already discussed that the Americans have placed their nuclear warheads in some of the countries which don't have nuclear capacity. Other than these states, UK, France, they possess nuclear weapons, and they are also, posing a threat to the Russians. So, in comparison to these NATO states, the Russians, they have got a force of about 845,000, people, and they have got, a strong artillery of 5,000, tanks of about 2,500, and warplanes about 1,300. But if you compare it with these states may have, in number, they are more or less, a little, I think, more than the Russians, if you analyze in a global perspective. The NATO states, I think they are more than 47 countries, 48 states. So that is the presence of the military of different countries. And then if we look at the defense spending, the more than any other country or any other region, the NATO countries, they spend a lot of money, billions of dollars, on the defense, refurbishment and the defense budgets of these respective states. And they possess, all sorts of capabilities. They possess, modern weapon and equipment, radars, early warning radars. Then they have got all sorts of, weapon and equipment, satellites. So they possess certain those capabilities which can seriously disrupt the Russian, you can say, strategic and economic interest in the world. If we look at the NATO's missile shield, which America wanted to plan and deploy in this region in Poland, that missile shield was again aimed at Russia. Because if you, I told you before that the no world, you can say, air defense system can guarantee that other countries' nuclear missiles or the conventional missile may not penetrate. So, but at the same time, the problem with these air defense system is that they give confidence to the host state that they are invincible. So that confidence is very dangerous, and the Russians didn't want that particular thing in European countries. So to counter that, the Russians developed modern missiles and model capabilities, hypersonic missiles and others, just to kill the NATO's, or you can say US, missile shield in this region. So the Americans, they have got their own point of view. They believe that this missile shield was aimed at North Korea and Iran, but the Russians took it seriously. Russians believe that this missile shield is aimed at Russia also. So they don't like it. They don't accept it. These are some of the military comparisons of different countries in this region, and if you analyze it, the NATO collectively is much greater than the Russians, and the NATO forces are more than collectively 3.370 million, and the Russians are also 7.6 million. So in comparison, numerically, the NATO, they have got, they outnumbered the Russians. So Russia want to ensure their security. So keeping in mind, they have developed certain capabilities, and these are the external challenges I was talking about. And if you analyze it, you will get to understand that these are the challenges which these countries are posing to the Russians. Look at the Russian defense budget, which is $90 billion, and look at the US defense budget, which is close to $700 billion, along with their allies. and these allies also have got billions of dollars of budget. So these are the external challenges which the Russians are facing in the modern times. All right. Um, NATO as a threat, as I told you before, to destabilize the situation in individual countries and regions and undermining global and regional stability. So this is their official doctrine, the Russian doctrine. They believe that the NATO, they create problems not only in individual countries like Libya, Iraq, Syria, but they also destabilize regions. They destabilize the African region, they destabilize the Middle Eastern region, they also destabilize the South Asian region with their unintended or unplanned war in Afghanistan. So their military buildup is a serious threat for the Russians, and they have, given all these things. Their threat perception is clearly mentioning that particular thing. We have already discussed all these things. The main internal military dangers comes from terrorism and extremism. That is also one of the things which is there. Ethnic and religious hatred, enmity, in the Chechnya and other areas. The activities of the Russia to contain the armed conflicts. The Russians uh, believe that the Russian Federation provides constant readiness of armed forces for deterrence and prevention of military conflicts. So, in order to prevent or in order to deter other powers, you need to have strong military muscle to challenge these countries, whether they are NATO under the umbrella of the America or any other country. Protection of the Russian Federation, definitely the Russians, all these military buildup is aimed for this, the protection of the Russian Federation and its allies in accordance with international law and international treaties of the Russian Federation. So allies, Russia have always supported their allies, whether it is Syria, and I have already discussed it that how the Russian military played a very important role. Russian Navy was there in the Mediterranean base, which is named as Tortos. The Russian Air Force was there in Latakia, which is also in the central place of Syria, and that particular air base played a very crucial role in countering the Free Syrian Army and as well as the IS emergence in that particular area. So the Russian Army, Air Force, Navy, their advisors, their military and equipment, it brought, you can say, stalemate in Syria and safeguarded Bashar al-Assad from total collapse. So that is one of the example in modern times. The Russians in the previous times have always supported their allies, like the Indians, for example, against Pakistan. They provided them with all sorts of weapons and equipment. In modern times, again, the Russians are the major, supplier of the arms to the Indians and the many other powers. इसी तरह ईरान के ऊपर भी Russia vetoed many harsh resolutions by the US in the UNSC and prevented Iran from total collapse, and provided Iran with nuclear reactors, provided Iran with military technologies, S-300 type of air defense system also, and support in many other areas, which was crucial. So that's how the Russians are protecting their allies, and they are also protecting themselves against emerging threats. To counter the missile shield, the Russians are coming up with modern type of strategic and conventional precision weapon systems. They are developing such weapons which are which have the ability to penetrate the Russian NATO missile shield. For example, in that category, the Russians have developed a missile which is known as RS-28 Sarmat missile. It is also dubbed as Saturn II, will replace the SS-18. It is capable of flying at a speed of 7 kilometers per second. Now, this is horrendous. This is really dangerous and really lethal machine weapon for the Russians and for the NATO countries, and it is a real threat. अब इतनी स्पीड से जो मिसाइल ट्रैवल करेगा, it would be quite impossible for the NATO or the US to stop that particular missile, and it has a range of about 10,000 kilometers. So you can well imagine it has the ability to penetrate any defenses, any country, around the globe, it can easily hit America or its allies. This is RS Sarmat, and this is really, really dangerous development in modern times. It travels at the speed of 24,500 kilometer per hour. 24,500 kilometer per hour, and it can carry 20 tons of warhead. And this is really, really very, very, you can say, dangerous thing for the US. 10 heavy warheads equal to 750 kiloton each. So this is something which is going to change the approach towards missile defense shields, because with these capabilities, I think this one missile can devastate and take out a country. So that is something which is the Russians are coming up with, and it has the ability to reach any place in the world within few minutes.